In this video we're looking at the new Chart from Image tool in Stitch Mastery version 3.2.0. There are two ways to set up a new chart from an image. You can either come to File or Stitch Mastery in the main menu and then open the New option and you've got New Chart Diagram from Image, or you can use the New Chart Diagram from Image third along in the icon menu. And a little dialog opens. I'm just going to extend this a bit. So the first thing we want to do over on the left hand side is to choose the photo or image that we want to use. So you can either click right here in the middle of this editing area, or the same icon, choose an image up in the top left. Select the image that you want to use. And then you may want to zoom in or out, and there's also a crop tool. So if you want to just use part of the image and not the whole thing, then you can use the crop tool for that. You can extend using the edges or the corners diagonally. And when you're happy with your selection, then click on the apply crop, the little green tick, and this fills our image. So our actions now, in the right hand side it says click on image to choose colours and yarns. A minimum of 2 colours should be chosen, and optional, select a yarn range to see the nearest yarn to the colour. So if you haven't seen in the new version of Stitch Mastery, we now have, in addition to the colour palette drawer, we have 2 yarn palettes from Jamieson's of Shetland and Jamieson and Smith. But if you are planning to design something and you don't intend to use those yarns, you can use just the nearest colours and obviously then use whichever yarns you want to. So you want to click on the image to choose the colours that you want to include in your design. So for this iris, I definitely want a white, I want a yellow, I think we may have 2 purples, and I think we'll do 2 greens, a lighter and a darker. So let's just extend this a little bit. So in our colours area, we have the 6 colours that we've clicked, and these are your computerised colours. And in the lower section, the yarn palette, by default it's showing us the closest match from Jamieson's of Shetland first, but you can click in the drop down and choose Jamieson and Smith, and then hit refresh, and that changes all of the colours over to the nearest corresponding colour from Jamieson and Smith. And it might be that you want to use a mixture of both. So for instance, if we actually swap back to Jamieson's of Shetland, but we might want to use a yellow from Jamieson and Smith, cross to remove the Jamieson's of Shetland one, click back to Jamieson and Smith. Now don't refresh because we want to keep these other 5 Jamieson's of Shetland colours, and click again to get the yellow, and then you get the nearest Jamieson and Smith yellow. And it's important to note here, so we have a preview tool which may be useful for deciding which palette you prefer the most, and so you can swap between chosen yarns and chosen colours. And whichever of these options you have selected will be the set of colours that go through to your chart. And you can't come back to this stage once you create the chart diagram. So it's just important to make sure that you are happy with either you've got the chosen yarn selected or the chosen colours, because you will have to manually swap those over if you decide you're not happy with them when you come to the chart design stage. So I'm going to stick with the chosen yarns option, and we'll click next. Now in the next section we are looking at the actual stitches and the grid. So we have a few different options. Again, we've got a zoom in and zoom out. We have fit to window, which is also the zoom, so it is default, it will fit your image to the window. And we can change the colour of the grid lines if you want to. So obviously this is quite a dark image, and it might be that you prefer your grid lines to be in white. You can turn the grid lines off if you want, and by default it will show the pixelated version, But if you want to see the full photo or image, then you can turn that off. Of course, this is a more accurate representation of what your stitches will look like because you'll only have one shade of yarn in each stitch. And how you approach making the grid will depend on whether you want to use gauge to size the cells. So for instance, if you know that you're designing with 4-ply yarn and you know what gauge you want from your chart, then you can put that gauge in and then add or remove columns to change the area. Or if you're not worried about the gauge, then you can use the fit to size of image option, and again you can add rows and columns. So obviously the smaller the stitches, the more detail you will have from your image, and you can then progress once you're happy with the final design. Click on next, and then if you've used Stitch Mastery before, you'll most likely be familiar with the new chart diagram dialog, which gives you options to choose where your chart will be saved, what to call it. The number of rows and columns are fixed based on what you've done in the previous screen, but you can set your first row and column numbers, where you would like column numbers to be displayed, whether you want it to be a flat chart or a circular chart, and if it's a flat chart, whether you want the first row to be a right side row or not. So we'll call this Iris chart and we'll keep it as a circular design. Click on finish and Stitch Mastery will produce the chart. Now we probably want to zoom to a slightly smaller size and fit a little bit more in. And of course this is a colourwork chart, so we want to edit diagram properties and include colour in the written instructions because we're using yarn colours. So that's edit diagram properties, the written instructions tab, and then our output text will include the yarn colours. Again, we can change the grid colour back if we are not happy with the white. It's not very good with all these white stitches, so we could make the grid colour something completely different so that it stands out. So this is again edit diagram properties, on the appearance under the grid section, and choose a colour that you prefer. We may want to hide this knit symbol, so select the knit symbol in your key, come to edit and then hide selection. That will remove that from our key. And we have our 6 yarn colours, which are a mix of Jamieson's of Shetland and Jamieson and Smith. And you have your yarn palettes here. And of course, if you then find that one of the other colours in the yarn range appeals more to you, the easiest way to change it over is to add a stitch of that colour in manually. So I've added the lavender shade, and then I can click on this colour and hit delete, and then Stitch Mastery will give me the option to replace all of those anemone colour stitches with the lavender, which is now in my chart. We hope that you enjoy using this new tool, and do get in touch if you have any feedback or questions.